Mr. President, we would like to thank the Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Mr. Ramiz Alagbaro. We thank him for a detailed report on the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories in the context of Security Council Resolution 2334. And we thank the High Representative for Gaza, Nikolai Mladenov, for his briefing. Well, the entire world is horrified by the aggression against Iran unleashed by the United States and Israel, which provoked a destabilization in the Middle East and the world markets. What is being undeservedly obscured is a deteriorating situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and in particular in the West Bank. Making use of the regional escalation, the Israeli settlers redoubled their efforts in infringing upon the rights of the Palestinians on the West Bank. Since the beginning of the war, there was an 80% increase in the crossings of roads and checkpoints. Additional military contingents have been introduced to Palestinian lands. Local people and municipalities saw 40 hectares of land confiscated for military needs since the beginning of the year. The settlers pushed out 1.5 thousand people from the West Bank as a result of what was being done by radicals and security forces. 29 Palestinians were killed. We're particularly concerned by the growing amount of weapons and weapon permits issued to the settlers on the West Bank and in East Jerusalem under the pretext of ensuring security. This leads to further escalation of the situation. Israel has increased the pace of settlement constructions and broadened the practice of the seizure of plots within the framework of the policy of creating irreversible facts on the ground. Unprecedented decisions were made as regards the construction of the E1 region and to review the legal status of the A area and B area in violation of the Oslo agreements, which were signed and ratified by Israel. As a result of this, as a result of the Israeli operation, the Iron Wall, more than 33,000 Palestinian refugees were evicted from the camps in Jenin, Tulkarm, and Nur Shams. Half of the buildings there were demolished, and this brings into question the return of the Palestinians there in future. What is openly provocative is the closing of the Al-Aqsa mosque compound for the Muslims in the last days of Ramadan on the pretext of security, and this became a new ordeal for the faithful. Also, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is closed to the believers. We call on Israel to safeguard the historic and legal status of the holy sites in Jerusalem. Against this background, what we see is the hate speech blooming actively. The accounts relate to radicals in social services call upon people not to miss the opportunity whilst the attention of the international community is diverted to Iran. The deputy mayor of Jerusalem, in a video clip against the background of a demolition of an UNRWA building, directly calls for the murder of all agency staff, and he is using the pretext of his religious views for that. We categorically condemn such a statement and call on Israeli authorities to undertake all measures necessary to make sure that this does not happen again. Unfortunately, such statements are not an exception. It's just one of the examples of an aggressive and targeted campaign deployed by Israel against UNRWA. Since the 7th of October 2023, 391 UNRWA staff was killed. Agency buildings are being demolished. A law is passed aimed at closing UN schools and hospitals. There are electricity and water cuts. Anti-UNRWA disinformation is being launched in the media. Despite all of that, UNRWA continues being the only body in providing comprehensive assistance to Palestinians and the occupied Palestinian territories and in the neighboring Arab states. The agency provides shelters for refugees, medical assistance, provides educational services, helps with basic necessities and food. The mandate of the agency is particularly important in the generally recognized international legal basis for the settlement of the Middle East. First and foremost, in making sure that the Palestinians have their rights prior to their return. And we note that many of the agency staff paid the highest price during the years of the war in Gaza. We support the efforts by the leadership of UNRWA, including the outgoing Commissioner General Lazzarini, and call upon donors to continue extending whatever assistance they can to the agency, whose representatives in the recent briefing acknowledged that even the regional escalation is less of a factor for UNRWA, less than their worsening financial situation. Mr. President, at the same time, the Gaza Strip is once again on the brink of catastrophe. Since the moment the notional ceasefire in Gaza was announced, 10th of October last year, that is, more than 650 Palestinians were killed and about 1,700 wounded. The yellow line is gradually moving west, and the territory which is not under Israeli control is shrinking. According to the information we have, the amount of humanitarian assistance has gone down by 80 to 90%. There is only one crossing point. Kerem Shalom is fully functioning. The Rafah crossing was partly restored recently for people's crossing. We're also witnessing that there are shortages of drinking water and food and medicines. And the prospects for the rapid restoring of civilian infrastructure are not there. Israel is blocking the supplies of construction materials. We call upon Western Jerusalem to ensure a safe and unimpeded access in line with the well-known guidelines. Overall, we must acknowledge that the implementation of the peace plan by Trump on Gaza, endorsed by Security Council Resolution 2803, is not something that we're witnessing. We understand, of course, that the regional escalation is not conducive towards creating favorable conditions for future stops so as to deploy transitional structures in the Strip and the formation of international stabilization forces in Gaza. At the same time, the lack of progress in the implementation of the plan, including the lack of understanding on the ISF, on the withdrawal of Israeli military from the Strip and the transfer of authorities to the Palestinian authorities, can lead to yet another spiral of hostilities. We are disappointed and perplexed by the fact that Ramallah is excluded from the political settlement process. Their representatives were not invited to participate in the Board of Peace. Well, we also wonder about steps against the Palestinian authorities, such as the withholding by Israel of the clearance revenues to the tune of $4.5 billion. All of this undermines American peace efforts. We call upon mediators to do everything they can so as to find a negotiated solution, the kind of solution that takes into account the interests of all parties. Mr. President, the position of Russia on the Palestine-Israeli settlement is of principled nature and is not subject to short-term changes. We advocate the resumption of the peace process on a generally recognized international legal basis, including the two-state solution, with the goal of creating an independent and viable state of Palestine within the 1967 border and the capital in East Jerusalem, coexisting in peace and security with Israel. As regards a regional escalation, here we call on parties to immediately cease hostilities. Russia is ready to assist in finding ways to resolve the current escalation and to do it via political and diplomatic means. I thank you.